My son slapped me across the face to impress his wealthy girlfriend. His girlfriend laughed at me, but I stayed silent. That silence was the beginning of his downfall. My name is Esther Lewis. I am 56 years old. For most of my life, I believed patience and love could mend anything. I had raised my only son, Ethan, with those principles. His father, Richard, passed away when Ethan was 12, and since then I had been mother and father, provider and comforter, teacher and friend. That Friday evening, I had set the dining table carefully. My house was warm with the aroma of roast chicken, glazed carrots, and apple pie, Ethan's favorite since childhood. He had called earlier in the week to say he was bringing his girlfriend, Chloe Montgomery, over for dinner. He said it proudly, almost nervously, as if he needed my approval more than ever. I had heard her name before, Chloe, from the Montgomery family, whose father owned one of the largest investment firms in New York. Her lifestyle, from what I'd gathered online, sparkled with excess. Vacations in Santorini, brunches in Paris, designer heels for every occasion. I told myself not to judge her. I only wanted to see my son happy. When they arrived, I knew immediately that this dinner would not be easy. Chloe walked in first, her perfume heavy and expensive. She wore a fitted beige dress and a diamond necklace that caught every flicker of light in the room. Ethan followed behind her, smiling too broadly, his hand lightly resting on her shoulder like he was trying to claim her presence, or maybe seek permission from it. "Mom, this is Chloe," he said, with an excitement that reminded me of a boy showing off his first medal. "Mrs. Lewis," she said, offering a hand that was cold and delicate. "I've heard so much about you." Her smile was polite but distant, as if she were speaking to someone beneath her social level. I ignored the sting. "It's lovely to finally meet you, dear," I replied, gesturing for them to sit. First few minutes went smoothly. We talked about travel, work, and the weather. I noticed how Ethan tried to match Chloe's tone, measured, detached, calculated. When I asked him about his job search, his face tightened slightly. Chloe took over. "Ethan's been exploring options," she said with a faint smirk. "He's too talented to settle for anything ordinary." I smiled faintly. That's good to hear, though sometimes ordinary jobs teach us extraordinary lessons. She sipped her wine, eyes glinting. "I suppose that's true for some people." Ethan laughed, too loudly. "Mom, you know Chloe's family runs a huge firm. They deal with high-level investments and philanthropy. She's got quite the business mind." I nodded, though her smirk didn't fade. Every sentence after that seemed to widen the gap between us. I could see Ethan changing. His tone, his posture, the way he cut me off mid-sentence as if afraid his mother's simplicity would embarrass him. When I brought out dessert, Chloe leaned toward him, whispering something. He chuckled, then said, "Mom, Chloe was just saying it's funny how people from small towns think homemade food beats fine dining." Her laughter followed, sharp and dismissive. My chest tightened, but I forced a gentle smile. I suppose both have their charm. Home reminds you of love. Fine dining reminds you of presentation. Chloe tilted her head, amused. "Well, love doesn't pay bills, does it?" Ethan laughed again, looking at her with admiration that twisted my heart. "True that, babe." Something inside me shifted. I had sat through condescension before, but this was different. It wasn't Chloe's arrogance that hurt, it was my son's approval of it. I tried to steady my voice. "Ethan, I just hope you never forget where you came from." He stiffened. "Mom, not tonight, okay?" Chloe rolled her eyes. "Let him breathe, Mrs. Lewis. He's not a boy anymore. You should be proud, he's with someone who's helping him grow." I glanced at her. Helping him grow doesn't mean tearing down his roots. Table went silent. Ethan's face flushed red. I could feel his anger rising. "You always do this," he snapped. "You think you're right about everything. You can't control me anymore." "I'm not trying to control you," I said softly. "I'm trying to remind you of the values your father and I raised you with." "Stop bringing Dad into this," he barked. You think your old-fashioned wisdom fits everywhere. Chloe understands real success, something you never did. The words struck like stones. For a moment I couldn't breathe. I saw in his eyes not the boy I raised, but a stranger desperate for validation. Chloe sat back, smiling faintly, enjoying the spectacle. I stood slowly. Ethan, we can finish this talk another time. But he rose too, anger simmering. No, say it now. You think you're better than her? You're not. You're just jealous because she comes from money. I tried to steady my voice. Ethan. And then it happened. He slapped me. The sound cracked through the room like thunder. My face burned instantly, but it wasn't the pain, it was the disbelief. My son, my flesh and blood, had raised his hand against me. For a heartbeat, the room froze. Chloe gasped then, shockingly, laughed. A cruel, awkward laugh that echoed like broken glass. Oh my God, Ethan, she said between giggles. You actually did it. That's well. He looked at her, waiting for approval, his chest heaving. She just smirked, crossing her legs as if watching a show. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I simply straightened my back, wiped the corner of my mouth where tears had started to form, and whispered, "Enjoy your evening." I walked to my bedroom, picked up my coat and keys, and left the house quietly. Sighed, the cold wind brushed against my cheek, numbing the sting of his hand. I didn't look back. I drove aimlessly through the quiet streets, my thoughts spinning. How did love turn into this humiliation? I had given that boy everything, my youth, my sacrifices, my dreams, and in return, he had given me shame before a stranger. By the time I reached the edge of town, I pulled over and rested my head on the steering wheel. Tears came then, hot and unstoppable. Yet beneath the grief, a strange calm settled in. A mother's love is forgiving, yes, but it should never be blind. That night, I decided something I never thought I would. I would take back the comfort that enabled his arrogance. The house he lived in, the same house his father and I built, would no longer shelter cruelty. I didn't raise him to hit his mother for applause. And I wouldn't let my silence teach him that it was acceptable. The next morning, I woke up in my sister's guest room. I had driven there late in the night, too shaken to go home. My reflection in the mirror looked older, lines deeper, eyes swollen. I touched the faint redness on my cheek. Didn't hurt as much as the memory did. I whispered to myself, he actually hit me. Saying it aloud made it real, and the reality broke something inside me. My sister, Linda, came into the room, her robe wrapped tightly around her. Esther, she said softly, Ethan called. He said you left in the middle of dinner. What happened? I couldn't find words. Only tears. She came closer, sat beside me, and held my hand. I told her everything, the laughter, the humiliation, the slap. She gasped, her eyes filling with disbelief. Ethan? You're Ethan? I nodded slowly. He's not my Ethan anymore. He's someone else. I don't even know who he's become. Linda's voice trembled. What are you going to do? I sighed, staring at my hands. For now, nothing. But soon, something. I stayed with her for 2 nights. During that time, Ethan didn't call again. Perhaps Chloe had convinced him that I deserved it, or maybe he was too ashamed to face me. Either way, the silence spoke louder than any apology could. On the 3rd morning, I drove back home. The driveway was empty. He had gone out. The dining table still held the remnants of that awful night, an overturned wine glass, crumbs of pie, and the faint scent of Chloe's perfume lingering like poison in the air. I stood there for a while, just staring. Every corner of the house carried echoes of love, birthdays, laughter, and now betrayal. I went upstairs to his room. It was messy as usual. Designer sneakers on the floor, expensive cologne on the dresser, and shopping bags with Chloe's name printed in gold. My heart ached at how far he had drifted. I sat on his bed and whispered, You used to run into my arms after nightmares. Now you've become the nightmare. That day, I called Mark Daniels, the real estate agent who had helped me buy the property years ago. "Mark," I said, keeping my voice calm, "I'm thinking of selling my house." He hesitated. "The big one? The one you live in now?" "Yes," I replied. "I need a fresh start." He paused, then said carefully, "Esther, you're sure about this?" "I've never been surer." By the weekend, Mark had listed the house quietly. I didn't tell Ethan. I couldn't bring myself to. I just moved a few of my essentials into a small apartment I'd found on the other side of town. It was modest but peaceful, white curtains, soft rugs, a garden that caught the morning sun. A week later, Ethan finally called. "Mom." His voice was hesitant, almost childlike. "Yes, Ethan. Look, about the other night, things got heated. Chloe thought you were being disrespectful, and I lost my temper." "You slapped me, Ethan," I said flatly. Silence. Then he muttered, "I said I'm sorry, okay? Chloe and I were just joking around afterward. It wasn't that serious." The words chilled me. "Not serious?" I repeated softly. "Do you understand what you did? You humiliated your own mother, Ethan, in front of someone who laughed about it." He sighed loudly. "Mom, you're overreacting." Chloe said her dad once shouted at her mom in public. "It happens. Families fight." I felt the last thread of patience snap. "Maybe that's how they live, but that's not how I raised you. So you hit me, and you expect me to excuse it because Chloe's father did something similar?" He groaned. "You always have to make me feel small." I closed my eyes. "I'm not making you feel small, Ethan. You did that yourself." When I hung up, my hands trembled. It wasn't anger, it was finality. That was the moment I decided he needed to learn the weight of consequence. 2 weeks later, the house sold. Mark called to confirm the papers were signed. "Congratulations, Esther. The buyer's family is moving in next month." I thanked him, though my heart felt heavy. I had poured years of memories into that home, but it had turned into a place of sorrow. Selling it was like cutting off a piece of myself, but I knew healing required space. That evening, Ethan came over. He looked tired but defiant. "I heard you sold the house." "What the hell, Mom? That's my home." "No," I said quietly. "That was our home. But you lost the right to call it yours the night you hit me." His eyes widened. "You're joking, right? Where am I supposed to live?" "You're 28, Ethan. You'll figure it out." He stepped closer. "You can't do this to me. Chloe's parents are expecting me to host them here next weekend." I looked at him carefully. "And that's the problem. You care more about impressing them than respecting me." He scoffed, turning away. "You'll regret this." "Maybe," I said softly, "but at least I'll sleep in peace." He stormed out. I watched from the window as his car sped off. I didn't cry this time. I just sat quietly, sipping tea, listening to the faint hum of life outside. Somewhere deep down, I knew the world would soon teach him what I couldn't. Over the next few days, I heard from mutual friends that Ethan had moved into Chloe's apartment. He was trying to keep up with her lifestyle, new clothes, new clubs, even borrowing money to maintain appearances. I didn't interfere. Every motherly instinct screamed to step in to save him from himself, but I stayed still. One night, I sat in my new apartment, watching the rain trickle down the window. I thought about Richard, what he'd say if he could see all this. He had always been gentle, believing that people only learn through consequence. Perhaps he was right. As days turned into weeks, the guilt that had haunted me slowly faded. Selling the house wasn't revenge, it was closure. It was the only way to break the pattern of enabling Ethan's arrogance. Then, one afternoon, I got a message from Linda. Saw Ethan's girlfriend at the country club without him. Looked upset. Heard something happened between them. I didn't reply. I only whispered to myself, "Lesson 1 has begun." I poured another cup of tea and watched the fading light. Peace, though bittersweet, was finally settling in. I had made my silent decision, and for the first time in years I felt free. It had been nearly 2 months since I sold the house. I thought the storm had passed, that silence would heal us both. But silence, I soon learned, is where pride begins to crumble. One late evening I received a call from Mark Daniels, the realtor. His voice was casual, but I sensed hesitation. "Esther," he said, "I ran into Ethan today." He looked rough. Said he was trying to find a place to rent but couldn't afford much. "Are you sure there's nothing you can do?" I took a slow breath. "Mark, I've done everything a mother can do. The rest he must learn himself." After that call, I found myself staring at my phone more often, expecting Ethan to call to say something, anything. But days passed and he didn't. Instead, I heard things from others, neighbors, church friends, even my sister Linda. Everyone seemed to know more about my son's downfall than I did. Linda visited one afternoon. She carried that look, the one people wear when they come bearing difficult news. "Esther," she began gently, "Ethan's been sleeping in his car. Chloe kicked him out last week." I set down my teacup carefully. "Kicked him out?" "Yes. Apparently, she found out he lied about having steady income. She called him a fraud in front of her friends." I sighed. The weight of it all pressed against my chest. "Did she at least let him collect his things?" Linda nodded sadly. "She tossed them in garbage bags. Her doorman said it was ugly." I looked out the window. The afternoon light stretched long shadows across my small living room. I tried to imagine Ethan's face, angry, desperate, wounded. I had wanted him to learn humility, not to be humiliated. But sometimes, lessons life teaches are harsher than any mother would choose. I didn't call him. I couldn't. Every time I thought of reaching out, the memory of that slap stopped me. I needed him to understand that love doesn't erase accountability. A few days later, I ran into an old friend, Marianne, at the grocery store. "Esther," she whispered, glancing around, "I saw Ethan outside the coffee shop downtown. He looked exhausted. He was asking people about job openings." I nodded slowly. "He'll be fine." She hesitated, then placed a gentle hand on my arm. "You're a strong woman, but even strong women break." That night, I lay awake for hours. The sound of rain tapping against the window reminded me of when Ethan was small, how he used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, clutching his teddy bear. I used to whisper, "It's okay, sweetheart. I'm here." Now I wondered if he thought of those nights too, or if Chloe's world of champagne and diamonds had erased them completely. The next morning, I went for a walk near the old park we used to visit. To my shock, I saw him sitting on a bench near the pond, head bowed, jacket torn at the sleeve. He didn't see me. He was scrolling through his phone, frustration on his face. I stood there quietly, hidden behind a tree, my heart twisting. A man who once walked with so much pride now looked like a boy again, lost and uncertain. Part of me wanted to call out his name, to tell him to come home, to remind him that no mistake was too great for forgiveness. But then I remembered that home no longer existed for him. I had taken it away to show him something he refused to see, that arrogance destroys comfort faster than poverty ever could. I walked away before he looked up. Later that week, I received an email from Mark Daniels. He had attached a scanned letter. "Ethan asked me to forward this to you," the message read. I opened the document, my pulse quickening. The letter was short, written in hurried strokes. "Mom, I'm sorry for everything. I know I hurt you. Chloe left me. I thought she loved me, but I was wrong. I see it now, you were right about everything. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wish I could see you again. Love, Ethan." Tears blurred my vision as I read it over and over. My heart softened, but my resolve didn't. I folded the letter gently and placed it in my bedside drawer. I whispered, "You're learning, my son. Keep learning." In the following weeks, Ethan's name began to fade from conversations. He was no longer seen at social events or tagged in Chloe's glossy Instagram posts. People moved on, as they always do when someone falls from grace. One Sunday after church, Reverend Hughes approached me. "Mrs. Lewis," he said, "I ran into Ethan outside the shelter downtown. He's been volunteering there lately." Quiet young man, but looks humbled. I nodded, a quiet warmth spreading in my chest. "Thank you for telling me." Felt strange hearing that he was helping others. Perhaps in losing everything, he had found the part of himself that success had buried. I didn't reach out still, but that night I prayed for him, for strength, for direction, for humility that stays even after comfort returns. Then, about 3 months after I sold the house, I got a call I never expected. "Mom," the voice said, faint but familiar. "Ethan?" "Yes, it's me." There was a long pause. "I know I don't deserve to ask, but can we talk?" I swallowed. "Where are you?" "Downtown cafe. The one near the library." When I arrived, he was sitting alone, looking smaller than I remembered. His hair was unkempt, his clothes plain. When our eyes met, he stood slowly. "Mom," he said, voice trembling, "I've been awful to you." I didn't speak. I just nodded for him to sit. He told me everything, how Chloe had mocked him, how he'd slept in his car, how her friends laughed at him the same way she had laughed when he hit me. "She said I embarrassed her," he murmured, voice cracking. "That she could never be with a man who raised his hand against his mother. I thought she admired my strength that night. I thought she was proud of me for standing up to you. But she said I disgusted her." I looked at him, and for the first time in a long while, I saw not the proud, misguided man but the frightened boy who once hid behind my legs at the dentist's office. "Ethan," I said softly, "what did you learn?" He lowered his gaze. "That power isn't in the hand that strikes, but in the heart that forgives. You were right. I was blind." I reached across the table, placing my hand over his. "You're beginning to see, my son. But seeing isn't enough, you must change." He nodded, tears spilling down his cheeks. "I will, Mom. I promise." As I watched him cry, something in me loosened, the tight knot of pain, the bitterness, the pride. I wasn't ready to forgive entirely, not yet, but for the first time I believed redemption was possible. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Felt like an ending, but also a beginning. Ethan kept his promise, or at least tried to. Through our meeting at the cafe, he began calling me once a week. Sometimes he spoke about job interviews that went nowhere, other times about small tasks he picked up, driving deliveries, helping at the shelter. His tone had changed. There was humility in it now, even gentleness. I listened, offering only short words of encouragement. I wasn't ready to open the door again, not fully. But I could feel the distance between us slowly shrinking. Then, one Thursday evening, my sister Linda called. "Esther, you won't believe this," she said, her voice almost trembling with excitement. "Ethan's planning to propose to Chloe. Publicly. Tomorrow night." I froze. Propose? After everything she did? Apparently, he still loves her. Maybe he's hoping it'll make things right. I wanted to laugh or cry or both. "He's chasing humiliation again," I whispered. The same pride wearing a different face. That night, I barely slept. I knew Ethan's heart. When he wanted something, he would twist himself into any shape to get it. But I also knew Chloe's kind. People like her thrived on dominance. To her, love was a game of superiority, not devotion. By morning, I had decided not to intervene. Some lessons could not be taught through words. They required pain sharp enough to pierce through delusion. The following evening, social media buzzed. Pictures, short videos, tags. Chloe Montgomery's charity gala, the night of elegance. I saw clips of the event streaming on several accounts. Then one clip stopped my breath. Ethan stood at the center of a glittering ballroom, surrounded by guests in designer gowns and tailored tuxedos. Behind him, a band played soft jazz. His hand shook as he held a small velvet box. The camera panned to Chloe, radiant in a silver dress, her expression a mixture of surprise and discomfort. Finn's voice was trembling. "Chloe Montgomery," he began, his tone emotional but nervous. "You've shown me a world I never knew existed. You've challenged me, inspired me, and even when life got messy, I never stopped loving you. Tonight, in front of everyone, I want to ask, will you marry me?" For a moment, silence filled the hall. A few guests clapped hesitantly. Chloe looked around, eyes darting like a trapped bird. Then, slowly, she laughed. It was that same cruel, crystal laugh I remembered from my dining room, the one that still echoed in my nightmares. "Oh, Ethan," she said loudly enough for the audience to hear. "You can't be serious." His hand froze in midair. "Chloe, She took a step back, eyes flashing with mock pity. "You really thought I'd marry you? You're broke. You live out of your car, for God's sake. And everyone knows what you did." Crowd murmured, some gasping, others whispering. Finn's face drained of color. "Chloe, please," he said softly. "That's not fair." She cut him off with a cold laugh. "Fair? You slapped your own mother at dinner to impress me, remember? You thought I'd find that attractive? I was terrified, Ethan. I realized then that you're dangerous and pathetic." The murmurs grew louder. Someone recorded from the corner, capturing every word. Chloe stepped forward, lowering her voice but not enough to hide her contempt. "I don't marry men who hit women, least of all their mothers." She turned, flicked her hair over her shoulder, and walked away as the audience watched in stunned silence. Finn stood there, still holding the ring, his eyes hollow. The jazz band faltered and fell quiet. Cameras stayed fixed on him as he slowly sank to his knees, hands trembling, tears glistening under the chandeliers. When I saw the clip online later that night, I didn't feel triumph, only a deep, aching sorrow. My son had fallen as far as pride could take him. And this time, the world had witnessed it. By morning, the video had spread everywhere. "Rich heiress rejects broke boyfriend's proposal in public," one headline read. Another called it, "The slap heard twice, when karma came dressed in diamonds." I turned off my phone. Later that day, Ethan showed up at my apartment. His face was swollen, eyes bloodshot, his once perfect hair unkempt. I opened the door slowly. "Mom," he whispered, voice trembling. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside silently. He stood in the middle of the small living room, staring at the floor. "I guess you saw it," he said. I nodded. "Yes." He let out a shaky breath. "I deserved it." I wanted to tell him no one deserved public humiliation, but I couldn't lie, not after everything. "You reaped what you sowed, Ethan," I said gently. "But I'm sorry it had to happen that way." He covered his face with both hands. "Everyone's seen it. My friends, my old boss, Chloe's father. I can't go anywhere. They all think I'm a monster." I touched his shoulder. "You acted like one. But you don't have to stay that way." He sank onto the couch, shoulders slumped. "She laughed when I cried, Mom." She laughed. I sat beside him, my hand resting on his back. "And now you understand the pain of that laugh. It wasn't love, Ethan, it was mockery." He nodded weakly. "I thought I was proving something that night, showing I was strong. But I wasn't strong. I was stupid." Silence hung between us. Outside, wind rustled the autumn leaves. I could hear the distant sound of traffic, life moving on, indifferent to our private sorrow. Through a long pause, Ethan looked at me. "Mom, do you hate me?" I shook my head slowly. "No, Ethan. I don't hate you. I hurt for you. But forgiveness takes time and you have to earn it." He lowered his gaze again. "I understand." He spent the night on my couch. I watched him sleep, his breathing uneven, his face pale under the dim lamplight. In that quiet moment, I saw fragments of the boy he once was, gentle, curious, full of light. I realized that redemption was possible, but it would not come easily. The next morning, he left early, leaving a note on the coffee table. "Thank you for letting me in. I'll try to be better, one step at a time. Ethan." I folded the note, placed it in my Bible, and whispered a prayer, not for his success, but for his transformation. Over the following weeks, the noise around the viral video faded. People moved on to new scandals. But I noticed small changes in Ethan. He found work at a construction site, took evening classes, even started volunteering full-time at the shelter again. He no longer talked about money or appearances. When he spoke, his words carried gratitude, not pride. One evening he said, "Mom, I want to start over. Maybe I can't fix the past, but I can become a man Dad would have been proud of." I smiled softly. That's all I ever wanted to hear. And for the first time since that night at the dinner table, I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, he had finally begun to grow. Months passed, and the sharp pain that once lived inside Esther Lewis began to dull. It didn't disappear, no pain like that ever truly did, but it softened enough for her to breathe again. She'd settled into a quiet rhythm, morning walks, volunteering at the library, Sunday service, and the occasional phone call from Ethan. He had changed, truly changed. Esther could feel it in the tone of his voice, calm, humble, almost childlike. He no longer spoke with that old arrogance or the hunger for validation that had once consumed him. "Mom," he said one evening over the phone, "I got a small apartment. It's not much, but it's mine. I even fixed the broken heater myself." Esther smiled faintly. "That's good, Ethan. I'm proud of you." The silence that followed was tender, filled with things both wanted to say but didn't. For Esther, the wound was healing but still sensitive. For Ethan, guilt lived in every breath. One Sunday, he showed up at her apartment again, this time holding a bouquet of lilies. "You always loved these," he said shyly. Esther took them slowly. "I did." They talked for hours, mostly about small things, his work, her books, the new neighbors. When he left, Esther felt something shift inside her. It wasn't full forgiveness yet, but it was a beginning. Then one rainy evening, everything changed again. Esther was preparing tea when her phone rang. She frowned at the unfamiliar number. "Hello?" A male voice answered, nervous and soft. "Mrs. Lewis?" "This is Mark Daniels." "The real estate agent?" she asked, confused. "Yes, ma'am. I sold your house last year. I just received a call from someone asking about the current owners. Said he used to live there, your son, Ethan." Esther froze. "Ethan called you?" "Yes." He sounded desperate. Said he wanted to see the place one last time, to apologize in person for everything that happened. Her throat tightened. "Did you give him the address?" "No, ma'am. I told him it wasn't mine to give. But he asked me to tell you something. He said he's sorry for every scar, every tear, and that he knows he doesn't deserve your forgiveness." Esther's heart sank. "Did he say where he was calling from?" "No, ma'am. But he sounded like he was outside, maybe at a payphone. It was raining hard, I could hear thunder." After the call ended, Esther sat on the couch, trembling. She tried calling Ethan's number. No answer. She sent a message, "Ethan, please come home. Let's talk." The hours crawled by. Midnight passed. No response. By morning, she couldn't sit still anymore. She went to his apartment, a small, weathered building downtown. The landlord, a tired man in his 60s, looked at her with recognition. "You must be Ethan's mother," he said quietly. "Yes," Esther replied, anxiety tightening her chest. "Is he home?" The man hesitated. "I'm afraid not, ma'am. Paramedics came last night. Found him collapsed in the alley behind the building." Esther's hands began to shake. "Collapsed? What happened?" They said exhaustion and hypothermia. He'd been working extra hours, skipped meals. The rain didn't help. Her knees buckled and the man caught her arm. "He's alive," he added quickly. "At least they said he was when they took him." Esther rushed to the hospital, her heart pounding. When she reached the reception, her voice cracked as she asked for him. The nurse nodded and led her to a dimly lit ward. There, on a narrow hospital bed, lay Ethan. His face was pale, his lips cracked, his breathing shallow. Tubes and wires surrounded him, machines humming softly in the background. Esther stood frozen, tears blurring her vision. Then she moved closer and sat beside him, holding his hand. "Ethan," she whispered, "I'm here." His eyelids fluttered. "Mom." Her tears fell freely now. "Why didn't you call me sooner?" He smiled faintly. "Didn't want you to worry. I was just tired." She shook her head, brushing his hair from his forehead. "You've been tired for too long, my son. Rest now, but don't leave me again." He squeezed her hand weakly. "I thought I had more time to make things right." "You do," she said quickly, her voice trembling. "You're here, that's what matters." But deep down, she knew he was slipping away. He looked at her, eyes glassy but peaceful. "I kept calling the old number," he whispered. "I wanted to tell you that I finally understand what being a man means. It's not power or pride. It's kindness. It's respect. You taught me that." Esther bit her lip, her sobs shaking her shoulders. "Ethan, don't say that. You're going to be fine. We'll start over, okay?" He smiled faintly, his hand growing lighter in hers. "Mom, thank you for not hating me." The monitor beside him beeped softly. Then the line steadied, flat and endless. "Ethan," she cried, shaking him. No, please. Don't do this to me." Nurses rushed in, but Esther barely heard them. The world blurred into muffled voices, flashing lights, and the soft echo of rain against the window. When they finally stepped away, one nurse placed a gentle hand on Esther's shoulder. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. Esther stayed there for hours, holding his cold hand, her tears soaking the blanket. Days later, she buried him beside his father in the old town cemetery. Only a few people attended, the shelter volunteers, a couple of co-workers, and Mark, the real estate agent. No one from Chloe's world came. After the ceremony, Esther stood alone by the grave. "I forgive you," she whispered. "Not because you asked for it, but because love demands it." She placed a single white lily on the headstone and turned to leave. In the months that followed, Esther continued living quietly, finding strength in small things. Sunrise through her window, the laughter of children at the library, the steady rhythm of prayer. Sometimes she still dreamt of Ethan as a boy, chasing butterflies in their backyard, his laughter echoing through time. And though the pain never fully left, neither did the love. Because in the end, she realized something profound. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past, it redeems it. Thank you for watching. Kindly subscribe to this YouTube channel for more stories like and please share to your loved ones.